Xiao is back, everyone. Well, I mean, as of the moment I post this video, he might not necessarily literally be back, but he'll be here in a few days. So now is basically the perfect time to be looking a little bit in depth into Xiao's specific build once again, because yes, there has been a lot of, things added to the game and have helped Xiao to become a pretty much better character and allows him to have kind of like a lot more Xiao mains from here on out, that I would have to say, because generally speaking, his gameplay is going to be a lot more comfy from here on out. But overall guys, I'm pretty sure you know the point of the video. We're going to be looking into Xiao's specific builds as well as some of his new updated team builds that you can build around him, and looking into how big of a difference he had already had toward his changes. And so without further ado guys, let's just dive right in. First off guys, yesterday I posted a pretty in-depth video looking into whether or not Xiao is still a pretty much worth it character at this point in time. So if you are somebody who is looking to have a little bit more updated info towards Xiao as well, be sure to check out that video after you have watched this specific Xiao build, because there are certain aspects of Xiao that I discussed pretty in-depth in that video, whereas in this Xiao build we're just going to be pretty much going into some of his updated teams, best artifacts and weapon at the current point in time. Now regarding Xiao's skill and kits, I'm pretty sure that most of you have already know what he basically does. His gameplay would definitely resolve around doing his plunging attack and using his E skill here and there. Now, whenever building Xiao regarding his talent priority, normally speaking, you would definitely want to level up his normal attack first, and then his burst as well as his E skill. Now generally speaking, you would love to increase all of his talent level to as high as you can, because yes, he does benefit from all of it, but Xiao usually prefer his normal attack to have a higher talent level first, because Xiao's burst only provides him with additional damage bonus to his infused plunging attack, and therefore the majority of Xiao damage is still calculated through the plunge modifier of his normal attack talent. So do keep in mind is that if you're planning to use character that kind of have the ability to buff burst damage, for example Raiden Shogun, that burst damage buff would definitely not be beneficial for Xiao, because his burst only increase his normal attack plunging damage. Now knowing about Xiao's kit is a pretty simple thing guys, but the more important thing here is going to be basically his gameplay tips, because there are nuances that you do need to remember when you are using Xiao. First, and one of the most important thing is going to be the difference between high and low plunge. Well, I'm pretty sure most of us are also pretty familiar with this, but it's still pretty important to mention this again, because there are two multipliers to word plunge. One is low and the other one is high. Now the difference between you getting high or low plunge can sometimes be a little bit tricky to identify exactly, because the reason why we want to know when's the best time to plunge is because if you plunge too early, you get a low plunge multiplier, but if you want to do high plunge and wait for Xiao to jump up a little bit too high, then you're actually wasting a little bit of your DPS by having the intervals of each of your plunges a little bit longer than needed. So most of it actually comes from experience, but for you to easily identify is that consider anything that's slightly above Xiao's height will be considered as high plunge. Definitely, as the more you play Xiao, you will have that innate ability to trigger inside of you and be sure to be able to do high plunges all the time. Now I know high plunges are pretty important towards Xiao, but also do you know what's more important is that guys, if you haven't high plunged that subscribe button on my channel, be sure to do so, as it is a very good way to support me and my channel, as well as I post a lot of Genshin videos, so I'm sure it will be very worth it for you. Moving on is going to be collision plunge. Now this is not as important, but it's still a pretty good thing for you to know whenever you're doing plunging damage. It's because it's kind of like a third hidden multiplier toward the plunge damage. For this only appears where you're in situation with Xiao plunging animation has a direct contact towards the enemy's model, and with this you will be doing an additional number that is referred to as collision plunge damage. Now in order to do this, you just basically try to plunge very close to the enemies, and then that collision plunge number will appear. Now the reason why I say collision plunge isn't as important for you to always focus on is because it sometimes entirely depends on the heights of the enemies you are facing, because generally speaking, if you're facing off very tall enemies, like what we have here in the first chamber of floor 12, it is pretty easy to get collision plunge damage. But if you're up against shorter or smaller as well as enemies that move pretty frequently, it's going to be quite hard to do this consistently all the time. Therefore, this is only something important for you to know, so that whenever you're up against very large bosses enemies, you can make use of it to clear it a lot faster. Now, generally the most optimal combo when you're playing Xiao is quite simple. Mainly, there are two ways that you can play whenever you're using Xiao's combo. That first one is obviously going to be you doing his constant plunge damage. Overall, this is going to be the combo that's going to yield Xiao the highest DPS. However, sometimes on your team there will be characters that requires you to weave in no more attack in order for you to trigger their burst. You know, like Xingqiu, Yelan, or even Toma if you're having him on Xiao's team. Therefore, normally you'd want to have a no more attack cancel between every single one of Xiao's plunge, so that he's able to trigger their burst and do more damage that way. Now, if you're someone who's already played Xiao for a while, I'm pretty sure you know Xiao is a character that do demand you to have quite a bit of energy management because his energy burst is pretty high, like around 70 energy. And considering Xiao rely on his burst, you always want Xiao burst to be on whenever its duration ends. So the act of you making sure that you funnel and pre-funnels energy particle towards Xiao before he enters his burst state is going to be something that you would want to learn. For example, right before you use Xiao Elemental Burst, you be sure to cast 2 of his E skill so that once you cast his burst, Xiao's get the energy particles. And now the reason why you always want to do this before Xiao's burst is because whenever Xiao's already in his burst state, his E skill do not create energy particles, so that you are going to be wasting a little bit of particles if you don't do it before. And then of course, usually Xiao have another Anemo character that runs alongside with him, or any of the support character that you have on Xiao's team, to make sure to use their elemental skill and then quickly swap back to Xiao so that you can funnel all those elemental particles towards Xiao's elemental burst as well, which is going to be tremendously easier for you to have Xiao's burst uptime and therefore allows your team rotations to be a lot more smooth. And as we have mentioned about rotations, Xiao do want to have a little bit of rotation management or rotation practice whenever you are using his team, because Xiao is a hyper carry. Whenever he's in his burst duration, he's going to be on field for basically 15 seconds. So in order for Xiao to do the most of his damage, the other support member also have to have their buff duration basically around the same time as Xiao is. So for example, if you're using Xingqiu or Yelan on Xiao's team alongside with a Bennett, you want to use their burst first before Bennett starts, because Bennett only have his burst on for around 12 seconds. And then of course work on pre-funneling all of the energy particles towards Xiao before casting his burst as well, so that whenever his burst ends, his energy recharge is almost full. So those guys are basically some of the most important tips you want to remember whenever you are playing Xiao, because yes, as I've mentioned, it is pretty simple, but you have to practice a little bit whenever he's in a specific team so that you have the best team rotation for Xiao. Alright, moving on, we're going to be looking into some of his best artifacts. Now, when it comes to the main stats of your artifact sets, the Sans will definitely going to be attack percentage. Goblet usually is going to be a Nemo damage bonus, or attack percentage is fine, and Circlet is going to be either crit rate or crit damage. Now, for Anemo and attack Goblet, usually they are going to be pretty much on similar performance. However, definitely Anemo damage bonus is usually going to be more preferred, because many of the artifact sets as well as other character buff is generally going to be focusing on buffing Xiao's attack percentage number. So if you can, try to get him a Nemo damage Goblet. Now, as we've mentioned before, Xiao is a character that do need his energy recharge level, but most of the time we won't be having any of the energy recharge on the main stat. Therefore, you want to prioritize having a little bit of energy recharge on your substat for your Xiao. Around 120 to 140% energy recharge is going to be a fine stat, and then you work on other pre-funneling method for Xiao to get energy particles. Now, regarding Xiao's specific artifact sets, the Vermilion set is always going to be Xiao's best in slot, because generally speaking, it's kind of like a set that is made for Xiao, and most of the time only he uses this set for the time being. Now in patch 4.1, we have the introduction of the Hunter set, and yes, this is also a very good set onto him as well, only performs slightly lower than the Vermilion set, but it does help you to build Xiao to have a lot more crit damage than he usually does, so that's going to be a good thing. Now the 2-piece sets of the Hunter set, Xiao won't be able to make use of it most of the time, so if you want to make a little bit more use, you can actually do a normal attack and charge cancel after every plunge, but usually, as I have mentioned, it's not really too preferred because Xiao constant plunging combo is mostly going to help him yield the most DPS. Other than that, Desert Pavilion set is also a pretty good set on him. Now it does perform a bit lower than the Vermilion set, but considering that this set is something that you use on Wanderer, so for example, if you have already farmed this domain before and you've got a pretty good number of artifacts to spare, you may be able to make use of it pretty well. And then the simplest way to build Xiao's artifact is going to be 2-piece Anemo damage and 2-piece attack percentage. Pretty good artifacts combinations because it's very easy for you to get decently good substats onto these, as you don't have to rely too much on a 4-piece artifact set. Onto Xiao's best weapon, guys. Up until this point in time, generally speaking, the Jade Spear is still going to be his BIS, or if you have a Staff of Homa and you don't really use it on any other character on your account, then yes, it's also right next to the Jade Spear as well, depending on the situations. Obviously, if Xiao is going to be under 50% HP, Homa is going to outperforming Jade Spear, but other than that, generally speaking, two of these weapons are kind of like interchangeable towards Xiao's most of the time, depending on which build you're currently having on him. Other than that, you know, like the Calamity Queller or Vortex Vanquisher can also work pretty well on Xiao too if you have it. But then if you don't really have those 5-star poem options, then the next in line would be the 4-star, and yes, usually the Deathmatch is going to be a very good 4-star option for Xiao. Other than that, we have, you know, like the Lithic Spear, decently nice option too, but it does limit his team build to only leeway character to make the most out of the passive of this poem. And yeah, generally the most free to play is going to be the Missive Wind Spear onto Xiao. However, it is an event weapon, so if any of you who didn't really have it, you generally have to rely on other 4-star options. And those are going to be Xiao's best artifacts and best weapon build for you. Now we move on to some of the more interesting discussion towards Xiao right now. It's going to be looking into some of the most updated teams that Xiao currently have right now. And yes, of course, I'm pretty sure you have already aware the latest and newest 5-star character introduction was Xianyun, and she's a character that kind of like a specific buffer for Xiao many of the time, because yes, she's the only character in the game that has access to increasing plunging damage. So yes, if we're speaking about Xiao, Xianyun is definitely going to be the character that runs alongside with him. Now alongside with that, we have Furina, who was introduced in patch 4.2 as well. And I also have to say that with the introduction of Furina, she's also a very much perfect character onto Xiao team as well, because in the past, Xiao's relying a little bit too much on other buffer, you know, mainly like Bennett. And of course, we have one of the best buffer in the game, which is Kazuha. However, he doesn't work alongside with Xiao because Kazuha can't buff Xiao Anemo damage. Therefore, with the introduction of Furina, Xiao first of all have access to one of the best buffer in the game as well now. But then Furina helps a lot with off-field damage too, and she's a different element. Therefore, Xiao also can do a little bit of swirl here and there. And then of course, we also cannot speak about Anemo team without Faruzan. Generally, C6 Faruzan is very much preferred on any of the Anemo DPS team. However, if you don't, then you can still use Faruzan pretty fine, and therefore I would just have to say that the best Xiao team is pretty much set in stone for the time being. The 3 slots on his team are generally Xiao, Faruzan, as well as Xianyun, and definitely the last slot is going to be Flex, but currently Furina is going to be the best character that we have right here. And for any other character to try to take Furina's slot, is going to be having a hard time, which is going to be quite a while. Either that or you have another sub DPS character that have very high constellation that can fit into a flex slot. So that I would say is currently going to be the best Xiao team we have up to date. Now with the introduction of Xianyun, apparently there is another pretty interesting Xiao playstyle that have been going on around, and that's going to be Pyro Xiao. And this is a pretty interesting team as well that features Xiao, Xianyun, Furina and Bennett. Now of course, yes, it is still pretty an invested team, but most of the time we're going to be relying relying on having a C6 Bennett so that Xiao can have his Pyro infused and actually doing vaporize damage alongside with Xianyun and Furina damage buff, and he is apparently doing pretty good vaporize number here and being able to have very decent clear time as well, which is rather interesting and a nice playstyle to have because, for example, if you're going up against enemies that have Anemo resistance, or who knows, down the line we have, you know, enemies that have Anemo shield and you're a Xiao main and you can't really do anything about it, well, we have Pyro Xiao now, can be pretty much go into any situations and he will still be fine. Now, if you're wondering if you can switch in any of the other Hydro character into Furina plays, and apparently I have tested some of them out, and yes, while you know character like Ayato or Kokomi who have pretty good Hydro application in an AoE situation can help Pyro Xiao to do pretty well, but overall I would say that Furina is still the best character because she has access to that damage buff, which is really valuable and usually outperform other Hydro character on the Pyro Xiao team, which is why I really much recommend you to have a Furina here. I did mention that basically Xiao best team is kind of like set in stone right now, but I know that investing into a C6 Faruzan or Xianyun is not something that you all can do because it is rather an expensive team. And so I was asking myself if whether or not there's actually another team that is going to be pretty much competitive toward the current best team, so that maybe you don't really actually have to invest too much into it. And apparently I would say yes, and that team is going to be Xiao, Jin, Bennett and Furina. Now, the only most important thing here is that Jin does have to be a C4 so that she has access to that 40% Anemo resistant shred on Xiao's team. And for Furina, for example, if you don't have Furina, then Zhongli actually is going to be a pretty good option here because he also provides you with a shield and as well as that attack and resistant shred decrease on your enemies as well. But overall, here's going to be my quick demonstration of that team compared to what Xiao's current best team to see how it actually performed. What actually happened here? Now we see that Xiao Jin team is doing 40 seconds while, you know, Xiao Xianyun Faruzan team is doing like 46 seconds. First of all, is that Xiao Jin team actually had a little bit of an edge here towards the first chamber of floor 12. It's because Xiao didn't really have that cryo aura applied to him, so that his action wasn't really too much limited and he was doing a lot more plunge than Xiao Xianyun's team. And also my Faruzan here in this showcase is not C6 and she's only currently at a C5 level. So overall, Faruzan is not on a maximum potential yet. Therefore, if Faruzan were to be at a C6 level, I would say that the team performance here is going to be at least around 10 to 15 or even 20% better depending on my Xiao build. But however, the fact remains is that even if only, you know, kind of like a few seconds different, at the end of the day, you do actually have a different options of Xiao team to build, even if you don't have access to the Primo gems to to pull for a C6 Faruzan as well as investing into a Xianyun. The most demanding thing on that team is probably going to be you having a C4 Xianyun, and apparently if you're playing for quite some time, C4 Xianyun isn't really too much out of the reach for you. And yes, there's also going to be a Furina that you have to invest, but here definitely my point is going to be that there's always going to be a different Xiao team that you can potentially build and run, and still going to do pretty well compared to the other options. Now, I know that we've already went in depth into some of the team here, but actually Xiao can run into multiple other different teams depending on your current accounts. So as I've mentioned, if you don't have two specific characters like Faruzan or Xianyun, which other options do you actually have? So we're going to be taking a quick look here, and first of all it's going to be Xiao Double Geo, which features Xiao, Xianyun, Zhongli and Albedo. Generally, once again, you do want Xianyun to be on the C4 level, so yes, and if you don't have Albedo, then Geo MC is still going to be a perfect solution too. So overall it is going to be a little bit like an invested team, but that's another option that you can do. Xiao can also be in a double Pyro team that features Xiao, Kazuya, Bennett and Xianyn. So this is kind of like a team that focuses a little bit more on having Xianyn doing a little bit more damage together alongside with Xiao, because Kazuya, yes, definitely can't buff Xiao, but he's going to be here to buff other Pyro character on your team. Or if you don't have Kazuya, then Sucrose is still going to be a pretty decent character. Sucrose is a very good character that helps funneling energy particles towards Xiao as well as having access to Thrilling Tails. So yes, it does help Xiao to do a lot more damage as well. Or if you want, you can actually do a Xiao double Cryo team, which features Xiao, Sucrose, Diona and Rosaria. Now this team is going to perform a little bit less than the other teams that I mentioned, but if you're kind of like on a budget options, then yes, this team can kind of work. However, another interesting team is going to be kind of like a Xiao Raiden team that you run alongside with, of course, Xiao Raiden and other electro characters sub DPS like Yai, and of course a Bennett for you to heal and buff this team before I actually have a Faruzan. Of course, before we reach patch 4.0, I've been using this team consistently, and it is a very good Xiao teams that have a lot of sub DPS electro damage as well as energy recharge capability is really nice, because Raiden is basically the best character in the game in terms of helping your team with energy regen, and alongside with another electro character, your energy regen is going to be a lot more beneficial, and of course Bennett here to help you with many of the healing and buffing as well. So those are some of the different teams that you can actually use, but as I've mentioned, the best Xiao team we've discussed before is going to be doing a lot more better and comfy, because with having access to Xianyun, Furina and Faruzan, you don't really have to play, you know, kind of like circle impact that you have to try to aim your Bennett or Xianyun in the right situation of your enemies, which is why, as I've mentioned before, Xiao is a lot more comfy to play now. Though his team investment, it is going to be a little bit expensive, or you'd love to have a C6 Faruzan, a Xianyun and a Furina. All of them are going to be pretty much invested. Now you technically don't need a C6 Faruzan to have her performing on an unlimited DPS team, because any of the other constellation level on Faruzan is totally fine. But to make everything comfy for Xiao, definitely C6 Faruzan is pretty much a game changer. So guys, those are everything I have to say regarding Xiao's updated build this point in time. I hope that the video was very valuable to you. If you have any questions, guys, leave it down in the comment sections, and I or some other lovely Genshin player will get to you there. If you are new to the channel, don't forget to click on the subscribe button, as it does support me a lot. And yes, I do post a lot of nice Genshin video for you to enjoy too, so that's going to be very worth it for you. Now, I've already posted a lot of other guides, especially, you know, like Faruzan guides. If you're looking to build Xiao team and you don't really know how to build Faruzan yet, then be sure to check out this video. I really appreciate you guys sticking with me to this part of the video, guys, and with that, I wish you a super day, and I will catch you on my next video.